Good evening, YouTubers. I'm going to talk about aliens and human origins, or rather, instead of aliens made us, we made them. And here's how. I think they descend from people who all descend from Adam and Eve, but were the product of genetic engineering to produce super soldiers, workers for extreme environments, and just to do it, who were off-world at the time of the flood. Well, the thing you hear usually about the Nephilim is that they were either the fallen ones or they were the children of the fallen ones. There's two base words could be translated Nephilim, but one of them has to do with being large and kind of a bully, and that's the root word that Strong's Concordance uses back of this, not the one that has to do with falling. And that would make more sense because these weren't the angels themselves, but were the sons of them. Now, angels don't marry. Angels can have sex, but they're shapeshifters, okay? And they can be solid for various purposes. So if you had some angels noticing that people had fun doing this stuff, and they could sort of, telepathically get in their minds and experience some of their experience inside do it for themselves. They could work themselves over to have the right equipment to do it, and to have a sort of nervous system that could experience and so on and so forth, but they'd be sterile. Now, Genesis says that there were giants in the earth in those days, and after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. So there were already giants in the earth, and military leaders would want more of them. Now, Genesis 4 describes a rapid increase in human knowledge, most focusing on the useful stuff. The Book of Enoch, which isn't really reliable, but it sort of fleshes out the picture of a great deal of detail in the knowledge, and most of it having to do with either evil or dual use. It could be good or it could be bad. And these women were also trained in arts of seduction and in witchcraft and mind control, so, telepathic influence. And they're probably out there screwing all kinds of important people, military leaders and politicians, so that the angels that they made with had more influence. And these guys and the women and the angels probably got together and decided that they were going to develop bigger and better and meaner soldiers and workers and so on. And took insect. This is based on what's observed in connection with what people with abductees have seen of the aliens. Insect, the mantis type looking aliens, somebody's pointed out, have only 4 sets of legs. Only 4 legs. 2 sets of legs. They got 2 arms, they got 2 legs. They don't have a middle set. So there's insect, mammal, reptile, obviously, and amphibian DNA involved, okay? And this is doped into the human. Now, these guys, some of them, were off-world during the time of Noah's flood, so they survived. And the aliens we see now are descended from them. But it strikes me that this sort of a mixture is going to be a little bit unstable. And this business of constantly adding more human blood into the mix over the centuries. Though there may have been a big uptake on it, but there's been reports of this kind of thing for a long time. I may reflect a desire to correct for some of the problems that could develop as this mix becomes unstable. Now, there's this interesting video which implies that this fellow who had long contact with them, with one as a worker, he got kind of nutty after he had his thing inside his head, perhaps got inside its head too. He said a lot of strange things, but there seems to be satanic implications in these 2 videos, one of which seems to be a little story that implies that at one point the aliens had some kind of a problem develop, and they made a deal with the devil to solve it. This would explain the definite demonic component in a lot of alien activity. But back to the origins issue. The pattern that is coming up with these reports of having DNA extractions of many Sasquatch samples, of Star Child, this little thing on the Atacama Desert, which is certainly not a mummified fetus because it's got at least one tooth. Might be a reptoid fetus. It was something like 90% human, and they figured that what they couldn't identify as human was just because of DNA degradation over time. But the pattern is the same. In all cases, the mitochondria, which comes strictly through the female line, only eggs of mitochondria, very rarely will a sperm of mitochondria, and I doubt that would get to reproduce because they'd be weighed down by the mitochondria it's hauling, and the faster moving sperm will get to the egg first. Only the female passes on the mitochondria. The mitochondria of all of these samples is 100% human. That means they all descend on the maternal line from human females. It is the rest of the genome where there's peculiarities. Now, I mentioned amphibian. One of the things that's been reported, well, several things have been reported, but repeatedly comes up the issue that the grayskins don't seem to eat that much. Not by the mouth, not that much. Mostly absorbed through the skin, which seems to be permeable. There's also a pattern of abductees getting turned on to environmental issues, and if they plan to eventually live on the surface here, they're going to be concerned about pollution in the water if their skin's all that permeable. Now, some amphibians don't need to live in the water. They could be out of it. Some toads could be out of the water for a long time. They also seem to have some secretion. And some people thought that they were slightly oily to the touch. There's probably quite a wide variety of them. There are some reports indicating toxicity from contact with them if they are frightened and injured. And this would be consistent with some types of animals, usually amphibians, that can exude, and some insects that can exude a toxin when they are attacked. Now, this would fit amphibians being an element within this mix, and that in turn might give some credence to stories of mermaids. Anyway, bottom line is the aliens did not engineer us. We engineered them. Maybe the Homo habilis was the original human. Everything else was some degree of engineering or another, including Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon. Another case of mishandling scripture, the Rephaim, supposedly they fall and they won't rise. This has nothing to do with not rising in the resurrection. The general resurrection is just saying, you look at the context. A verse without a context is a pretext, someone said. You look at the context. All that's being said there is that your enemies are down to the count. They're not going to recover and attack you again. There's nothing like hiding out that's going to sneak up on you. That's all it's saying. And the idea that these are soulless, or that the soul or the spirit is transmitted on the male side, that's ridiculous. In fact, the Hebrew word for beget, which is translated beget in the case of a male, is the same word used for a woman giving birth. We don't have souls, we are souls. God breathed the breath of life into Adam and he became a living soul. The term having the breath of life was applied later on in Genesis during the flood, describing the animals that died in the flood. So they also are souls, just a different kind of soul. If there's a hybrid, then it's got a hybrid soul. This, of course, gets, this means that, yeah, these things do have souls. Or they are souls. The term nephesh, or soul, is a portmanteau word. It can be used to mean that immortal, a little more physical, the etheric than the spirit, and supporting the life, organizing life of the body. Elements, the interface between body and spirit, and the spirit goes on when the person or animal dies. The body, the physical, the more dense end of the spectrum drops off, and soul and spirit go on in reduced form, lacking the body. But nefesh can be the entire body, soul, spirit, or it can just be that particular thing we call the soul. There are aspects of the function of the soul that, when absent, we think of someone as soulless. There's still, a soul, but there's something seriously wrong. And, of course, in case of brain damage or psychopath, but it's still a soul. Now, I think it's a very important thing. You have people running around saying that there are these Nephilim hybrids possibly now, and they could pass for one of us. And and Chuck Missler's New World Order connected, right? His own bragged about credentials. And you have people like this running around saying that there are these hybrids originally were soulless, that's going on now again, and implying that transgenic humans might be soulless and all this stuff. And the next step would be whether these guys intend it to happen or not. People are going to start thinking about, well, if they're soulless, it's okay to kill them. And I think it's even a small group of people start talking in those terms. Now, if you ever have some major round up and massacre people move, all you gotta do to prevent the Christian element from opposing it, or any element that might oppose it, but that buys into this legend, this twisting of this legend, is have them all believing that these people have no souls, and label anybody that you want to nail as being Nephilim, and then nobody's going to protest it. And this is just based on a pack of lies. It's a very dangerous line of thought. But the other dangerous line of thought, and much more likely to happen, is that the aliens arrive and persuade us to toe their line and forget Christianity, or else warp it considerably, because supposedly the aliens actually designed us. No, they didn't. We engineered them.